Hello everyone, I'm John Chun. Welcome to Sharing Vietnam. Despite the progress Vietnam has made, foreign investment still plays a significant part in its development. In order to transition to a more organic growth, Vietnam needs to make a lot of changes and reforms. Among these improvements are administrative reform. Today in our talk, we will have the chance to speak with Mr. Frank Donovan, Mission Director of USAID, about administrative reform here in Vietnam. Frank, it's a pleasure.
Hey, John.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I know I can go far.
Mr. Francis Donovan, Mission Director of USAID in Vietnam, has been living in Vietnam for 3 years.
I like my motorbike, it gets me where I want to go. I like my ein Tick, c'est my ein. All right.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, sure. This one actually is a song I just recently wrote while here in Hanoi.
Oh, great.
It's called Ein Tick Se Mai Ko Ein. Okay.
So it's a Vietnamese-inspired song.
Vietnamese-inspired, and it goes something like this. I like my motorbike, it gets me where I want to go. I like my motorbike, it gets me through wind and rain and snow. Ein Tick Se Mai Ko Ein, no du ein đi đến nơi ein muốn. Ein Tick Se Mai Ko Ein.
That's great. Good job, great.
Okay, thank you.
And how are you enjoying Vietnam so far?
Fantastic. It's a great place to be at this point in Vietnam's history. The economic growth, the progress, and Vietnam, looks like it's making changes to try and make life better.
And here in Vietnam, do you have any hobbies or extracurricular activities that you're involved in?
I do like to exercise in the morning, and that's also very amazing to me. At early in the morning, so many Vietnamese are up doing exercise. I also like music, playing the guitar, and also now the ukulele. In some ways, watching the traffic in Hanoi, and it seems like everybody is going somewhere very fast. And in some ways, that's how I see Vietnam and the society. Everybody's trying to work for themselves and their family to create a better future.
Definitely. And you inserted a Vietnamese verse in there.
Right.
How did you come up with that? Any help or?
I did get some help. As I started writing it, I thought, yeah, there's sometimes you're going fast, sometimes you have to go slow.
Exactly.
Sometimes you need help along the way from people if you get stuck. But that's also a metaphor for life too. So yeah, some Vietnamese in Da Nang, as I was writing it, they were helping me with the Vietnamese.
Oh, great.
And then some of my staff also.
Yeah, the Vietnamese people here are very helpful. And what's your experience been with people in Vietnam?
Very enjoyable. I think what I enjoy the most is people, in addition to being very friendly, they're very candid, they're very honest. They will speak kind of directly, get to the point.
And so you're here in Vietnam working for USAID. Could you explain to us more about your work here?
Yes, the U.S. Agency for International Development has many different programs in Vietnam, and it covers things such as health. We're helping fight HIV/AIDS in particular, also avian flu, bird flu, and pandemic flu. We also have other projects. We're helping the government move towards a market economy, become more globally integrated. So we're providing technical expertise in that area. So we also have a higher education program, and it's focused on the university level, also with vocational institutions, and it's part of a private-public partnership.
So Frank, we're going to talk about your work with USAID in our next segment, but we're going to take a little break, and here's a clip about USAID here in Vietnam.
USAID is the United States Agency for International Development. USAID activities are helping accelerate Vietnam's transition to an open, market-based economy, develop capacity to mitigate the harmful effects of HIV/AIDS and advent and pandemic influences, improve access to quality higher education, improve vulnerable group access to services, address world legacy issues, and ensure that good government progress along with economic and social development. Since 2000, USAID has provided $430 million in assistance to Vietnam.
Hello everyone and welcome back. We're speaking today with Mr. Frank Donovan, Mission Director of USAID. So Frank, how do you assess the role of administrative reform, which is our topic of discussion today? How would you evaluate administrative reform here in Vietnam?
Administrative reform, especially Project 30, which was a Prime Minister kind of driven project, was a great first step in terms of regulatory reform for Vietnam. It achieved some major accomplishments, and it still has some way to go. But if you like, I can tell you what I think the major accomplishments were.
Sure, also, and then if you can speak on how it helps improve the business environment and promote foreign investment as well.
Right, because the whole idea of administrative procedure reform is to take a look at all these procedures that are out there in Vietnam. How do they affect business today and the private citizen as well? How do they affect the private citizen? And are there some procedures that are out of date? Definitely. Or some procedures that are too cumbersome and cost too much money to comply? So look at them and try to simplify and make it easier for business and the private citizen.
So Frank, you mentioned Project 30. It started in 2007 and ran to 2010. How would you assess its success in the past 3 years?
Yes, it has made some major accomplishments, and it has also some way to go. But the major accomplishments, number one, for the first time, Project 30 put online all of the administrative procedures in Vietnam, over 5,000. And these were administrative procedures from the top level of government, the central government, down to the provincial level and the communes.
Wow.
And now, for the first time, any citizen or private sector business could go online and find that procedure. So that was actually the first major accomplishment. But then the second major accomplishment was the government then organized a review of all of these procedures to look at them to determine, are they still needed? Are some of them still needed? Can some of them be simplified so that it's less costly for business or the private citizen? Should some be changed? And so that review process took place. So that was the second major accomplishment.
And my next question for you, Frank, is what do you see as the most significant factor in administrative reform, not only in Vietnam, but just in general?
Part of the really making it work is involving the private sector. And actually, Project 30 did do that. In the review process, the government invited in the private sector, and these were often representatives from the chambers of commerce, AmCham or EuroCham or VCCI, the Vietnamese Chamber of Commerce Industry. The government asked them, okay, we are reviewing administrative procedures. What do you think? What would your recommendations be? And that was very important because obviously the private sector can say, well, these are very important to us. Here's how we would recommend to change them. You, the government, can still achieve your objective, but it will be less costly on us, and we'll be able to invest more. So involving the private sector is key. And I would say that's the same for the future, to continue to reach out to the private sector, get their input so that when you do make the change, it does reflect a win-win situation.
For everyone. Frank, we're actually going to take another break, and let's take a look at a clip on administrative reforms here in Vietnam.
Administrative procedure reform was implemented with the purpose of giving support to the successful realization of socio-economic plans, building a democratic, transparent, professional, and efficient administrative system. Through simplifying and reducing unnecessary administrative procedures, administrative procedure reform will significantly reduce their burden on individual as well as enterprise.
Hello everyone and welcome back. So Frank, everyone would agree that Project 30 was the right step in the right direction for Vietnam. As we move towards simplifying administrative procedures, what do you think is the next overall strategy?
It was a good first step in terms of putting things online, conducting a review, and now it's the implementation part, which is often the hardest. How do you work with the different parts of government, whether it's ministries or provinces, to implement the administrative reform changes? Change can be hard. So implementing these new changes, listening to the private sector, making sure you have some of their input in the change, those are the keys.
And then looking towards the future, the solutions you said, one of them you mentioned is including the private sector. What are some of the other things that you would suggest for the Vietnamese government to include into their solution?
There's one law that was passed in 2008 that had two important aspects to it. And what it said was that as laws are drafted, there should be an opportunity for the public to provide their input. So this means that laws that are drafted would be posted somewhere, and public would have, the opportunity to go online and make a comment. So that's one thing that I think should continue on into the future. The other is that same law also approved regulatory impact assessments when making new laws. And essentially what that means is that as a problem is out there and the government wants to address it with a law, you look at different options. How can we address that problem? You consider the cost and benefits. How much will it cost for the government to enforce it? How much will it cost for the private sector to actually comply? And even involve the private sector in a discussion, because they may come up with an idea
that the government
that will address it. So those are two things, I think, for the future.
And what role will the USAID play in the future?
We are continuing to support the whole process, both administrative procedure reform. There's a new agency in the government that is responsible now, and we're providing support to that agency. We are also now working with CIEM, or the Central Institute for Economic Management. That's part of the Ministry of Planning and Investment, to promote regulatory reform more broadly in Vietnam. This November actually will be the 50th anniversary of USAID.
Wow.
And we're looking forward to celebrating it. We hope to share information about our different programs that, of course, we're all excited about, but ultimately that all contribute to Vietnam's development.
That's right. And then, Frank, before we end our show, would you like to share anything with our viewer audience?
Just that it's a pleasure to live and work in Vietnam. Really enjoy working with people, and my particular work, and I'm part of the U.S. Ambassador's country team. I want to contribute the best I can to improve relationships between the two countries.
So Frank, thank you very much for joining our show. It's my pleasure.
All right.
Thank
you, John.
And that concludes our show for today. Thank you for watching Sharing Vietnam. From all of us from NetVit, channel VTC 10, I'm John Chun. Live for today, and we'll see you tomorrow.